about the Maccabean revolt.
Sure, if you want to dive into the Maccabean revolt, just let me know what you need. We can talk about the historical context, the key figures, or anything specific you're curious about.
The emergence of the Pharisees ultimately happened as the Maccabean revolt succeed, and the Hasmonean dynasty was established, right?
Yeah, you got it. So basically, once the Maccabean revolt succeeded, it led to the establishment of the Hasmonean dynasty. The Pharisees kind of rose up as a significant group during that whole period because they were really involved in the religious and social life of Judea at that time. So it all kind of ties together.
So why Maccabean revolt break out?
Well, in a nutshell, the Maccabean revolt broke from the ruling Seleucid Empire to force the Jewish population to adopt Hellenistic customs and abandon their traditional religious practices. Basically, the Seleucids were trying to impose Greek culture and religion, and that really didn't sit well with a lot of devout Jews. So the Maccabees, who were this group of Jewish rebels, rose up in revolt to reclaim their religious freedom, and that's how it all started.
So when did it happen? What year was it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Maccabean revolt kicked off around 167 BCE, give or take. It was during that period that the Jewish rebels, led by the Maccabees, started their uprising against the Seleucid Empire. So it's basically late 2nd century BCE.
So the Seleucus dynasty tried to do something in the temple, right? That's what really.
Exactly. Yeah, no problem. So basically, what really pushed things over the edge was that the Seleucids tried to desecrate the Jewish temple. They set up altars to Greek gods, they outlawed Jewish religious practices, and they really tried to force the Jewish people to adopt Greek customs. That kind of desecration of the temple is what really sparked the Maccabean revolt in the first place. So you're totally on the right track there.
So at that time, how many people sacrificed?
Yeah, so when it comes to how many people were actually killed or sacrificed during that whole conflict, it's a little bit tough to pin down exact numbers, but historians generally believe that there were thousands of casualties over the course of the revolt. It's not a small number. It was definitely a significant and bloody conflict. So it's one of those historical events where a lot of lives were lost in the struggle for religious freedom.
So you cannot even say roughly how many people sacrificed?
Yeah, I get what you mean. It's always a bit frustrating when history doesn't give us a nice, clean number, but roughly speaking, historians usually estimate that we're talking in the range of a few thousand lives lost over the course of the conflict. It's not a super exact figure because the records from that time aren't perfectly precise, but a few thousand is generally the ballpark that people go with.
So how long did the Hasmonean dynasty last, and why did it fail?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Hasmonean dynasty, once it got established after the Maccabean revolt, actually lasted for close to about a century. So roughly from around 140 BCE to about 37 BCE is the ballpark. Now, why did it fall? Well, a lot of it had to do with internal strife and also the growing power of Rome. There were family disputes, there were conflicts over who should rule, and eventually the Romans came in and kind of took control. So it was a mix of internal and external factors that brought the Hasmonean dynasty to an end.
So the Pharisees, they are the loyal family that try to keep the Jewish tradition.
Yeah, that's that's pretty much spot on. The Pharisees were definitely the group that really focused on preserving Jewish traditions and the law, especially during all that political upheaval. They were kind of the champions of maintaining Jewish identity and religious practices, even as the Hasmonean dynasty and later the Romans came into the picture. So yeah, they were really loyal to keeping those traditions alive.
So the sadducee, they are the
Absolutely. So the Sadducees were kind of the other major group at that time. They were more connected to the priestly aristocracy, and they were a bit more Hellenized, so they didn't always see eye to eye with the Pharisees. But yeah, each group had its own way of trying to keep things going in that really complicated era.
So sadducee were the origin from Sadduc priest, or
Yeah, that's exactly right. The name Sadducee is traditionally linked to the priestly family of Zadok. So they saw themselves as kind of the legitimate heirs to the Zadokite priesthood, and that gave them a lot of their authority and their identity. So yeah, you're spot on. They were very much rooted in that priestly lineage.
so after all that sacrifice, the Pharisees, did it for the love of God, and why did the Jesus time that they're so corrupt?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question and kind of a complex one. Basically, over time, the Pharisees initially were really dedicated to preserving the law and traditions out of a love for God. But by the time of Jesus, some of that initial devotion had, for at least some of them, turned into a kind of legalism or a focus on rules over the heart of the matter. And of course, not all Pharisees were correct, but Jesus was definitely calling out those who had maybe lost their way a bit. So it's kind of a reminder that over time, even well-intentioned groups can sometimes get a bit off track.